My name is Sarah Brooks, and I'll be the interviewer for Carlton Cartwright. He's my mentor. Carlton Cartwright, could you state for the recording what your branch of service you served in, what was your rank, and where did you serve?
Do that again?
Yeah, I was going to actually do that again.
One at a time.
What was your
Branch of service was the United States Air Force. My rank at my time of separation was E5, Staff Sergeant.
and where did you serve?
Where? I served, I went to basic training in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, in San Antonio. I went to tech school at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. And my first duty station was March Air Force Base in California, in Sunnymead, California. And my second duty station was Wiesbaden, Lindsay Air Station in Wiesbaden, Germany. And I did my reserve duty at Homestead Air Force Base, Florida. Was that it? There you go. You want to stop that? There's a button where your thumb is. Press that button.
Today is February 13, 2010, and this is the beginning of an interview with Carlton Cartwright at Children's Coalition, West Palm Beach, Florida. He is 56 years old, having been born. When were you born?
I was born March 5th, 1953, in New York City at Jamaica Hospital in Queens.
What branch of service did you serve in?
I was in the United States Air Force for 6 years. 4 years active duty and 2 years reserve.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted in the service in 1977, but there was some complications with my marriage. I was separated from my wife, and I had to file papers to complete a divorce. So I did that in Cumberland, Virginia after I left. I had been out of New York City for about 4 years. And I was living in Florida at the time. I grew up in New York. But I was working at IBM. I started work there in 1972. And, 1974. 1972 is the year that my son was born. So I started working for IBM in 1974. And in 1977, I did the application I tested to go into the military, into the Air Force. I had tested once previously when I was 18, and I had qualified for air traffic control for the Air Force, but they didn't have any slots open, so I didn't go in at that time. So I went in finally, finally went in April, but I had gotten to, I had left IBM in 77 in the winter in Boca Raton, and went up to Cumberland, Virginia to stay with my dad. I thought I was going to be there for like a couple of weeks. And then the whole issue came up about my divorce papers. So I wound up being with him for 3 months. So that means that actually I went 3 months prior. So I guess January, February is when I went and stayed with my father originally. And I was there 3 months and finally went into service. It was into March. March 23rd, March 24th, 1978, I actually was inducted into the United States Air Force.
Why did you join?
Well, I was really tired of my job. One of the big issues was it was very racist where I was working, and I believe there was a great deal of nepotism going on. Anyway, it was very hard to get. It was very hard to get a promotion, and I think that a lot of the rules had not changed racially even that late in the game in the 70s in the southern part of the United States. I was, as I said, I was living and working in Southeast Florida. So, I was really very tired of that situation, and I was looking for a new opportunity. I didn't quit my job. I took a 4-year leave of absence. So I, have a job to come back to if I decided not to stay in the military. So, I enlisted. There was no draft at that time anyway. There was no draft. So I wasn't forced to go in service. I went of my own volition, went of my own free will. And I wanted to, I decided to take a crack at another career and see what I could do in the military.
Why did you pick the service, the branch you joined?
Well, I had discussed it quite a bit with my father, and I think the only other choices we really discussed besides the Air Force was the Navy. I had considered going in the Navy, but my father sort of convinced me that I would probably, during wartime, it would be a little better if I was on land instead of versus being out on the ship in the middle of the ocean. Not only are you, if you think about it, not only are you worried about a bomb hitting the ship and you drowning, but if you're just stuck out in the middle of the water, then the friendly or unfriendly shark could come by and visit with you. So, and he might not leave you with everything that he found you with. So anyway, no, the Air Force was it also was the best choice. I visited with the other services from time to time throughout my active duty career, and I actually felt overall that I had made the best choice.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Excuse me?
Do you recall your first days in service?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I actually remember all that quite vividly. A basic training and, just taking the plane trip. I flew out of Virginia and went straight to Lackland Air Force Base. Yeah, I flew down there to Texas, to San Antonio. And there was a bus there there was a bus there for military, inductees at the airport, and you take the bus to the base, to Lackland Air Force Base, and you go into this building it's a wide open space, and they start issuing you your gear, your uniforms, towels, soap, the whole 9 yards, boots. I don't know if we got our blues just in or not, our dress uniforms or not. We may have, but I remember getting the greens. We got our fatigues. And then you get a haircut, and they start examining you, and you have to strip in the whole 9 yards. And, it's just like everybody all one at a time. But everybody's like people in front of you and behind you, and you're just moving. And I think the most memorable part of the whole experience with that is you really remember sitting in that chair and them taking all your hair off. They don't ask you any questions. I think I remember a couple of people complaining. I didn't. But a couple of people going, they were complaining about it. And I just went, no, just go ahead, no big deal. And I had quite a bit of hair then. That's not really funny. No, but I did once upon a time. I had quite a lot of hair in my head. And after that, they just, I don't know, I can't remember. If we probably marched. After that point, now you're marching. The bus ride is over and you're going to walk everywhere. You're not going to see another ride on a vehicle until it's actually time for you to go and leave the base. However, I did, while I was there, I had some friends of mine found out that I was there, and they actually came and got me and another friend of mine. Two of us were in basic training, and we spent the weekend with them in San Antonio. But otherwise, everything was walking. You you marched to Chow, or if you had to go to the hospital, you either marched there or walked there on your own. Or if you had to go to the headquarters, you walked or marched, or you marched to PT, to physical exercise every morning. We used to have to get up, I think, at 5 o'clock, and we got up at 5. You sort of got to go to the restroom and straighten up, where your bunk was. and then they call you real quick, and you had to run, get in line, go downstairs in line. I think we were up on the 3rd or 4th floor. Barracks was about four stories high. Nobody was on the bottom floor. It was just posts holding up the buildings on the bottom floor. And one of the reasons was because, especially if there was bad weather or if it was too hot. If it was too hot, we didn't go and do regular PT in the sun. They had a flag regulator outside. It was too hot, or it was just okay. It was like a green flag. It was too hot. I think it was a red flag. Or it was medium. It was like yellow. And we had a couple of those too hot days where we just went. I'm trying to remember what they used to call it up underneath the building. It had a name. But at any rate, that space up underneath the building, we would form up in line and how those lines were formed. There was the shortest person in the front and the tallest person in the back.
Where were you?
Probably about in the middle or so. It may have been 10th or 15th, and I think there were about, but I think there was like 4 rows, because it's about, I'm thinking in a barracks, it was like 30 or 40 people in the barracks. Yeah, 10, 20, 30, about 40 people in the barracks. And I remember that, by the way, you figure you had 20 people on one side, and you go around the corner, be another 20 people, 2 rows of 10 on both sides. And so it'd be about 40 people in a flight. And so we would go at 5 o'clock. First, we would go and run or walk as fast as possible for 1.5 miles. And then we would do jumping jacks and sit-ups and all kinds of calisthenics before the day got started. And halfway through the 6-week basic training course, there was the, what was it? The obstacle course. That's what you were preparing for, getting them doing all these calisthenics every morning, doing the jumping jacks and the sit-ups and the push-ups and, the 1.5 mile run. About 3 or 4 weeks in, then you went to the obstacle course. And, it was really a team effort. You get, like maybe you probably accumulated hopefully 2 or 3 buddies, and you wind up helping each other. They would help you get over walls and jump over not just puddles, but large, semi-large bodies of water, so you didn't land in there and then have to run the rest of the thing soaking wet. And then you had to climb up the ropes and go over the wall and keep running. And you had TIs, training instructors, throughout that obstacle course, helping you through there, encouraging you. Yeah, hurry up, get up, go. That was a help that they gave you. So stopping short of, pushing you, which they didn't do. It was no physical abuse. They let you inflict the physical abuse upon yourself on the obstacle course. So, anyway, let me see. Oh, after, PT in the morning, and then we go back upstairs and take showers, and then you get dressed. Then we went off to class every day. And there was another part to class after a while, but I'll get to that in a minute. I went for staff administration support. And also, somewhere in that indoctrination, after we had gotten there, that very first day, we got to say, not that it was going to happen, but you got to sort of put some choices down as to where you wanted to be stationed. And I remember specifically, I said stateside, I wanted to go somewhere in California. So I actually chose March Air Force Base, where I wound up. But then, I also my first choice was actually go overseas. And I think I must have put, I probably put somewhere in the Asian theater, like Japan or Korea or Hawaii or something, in the Pacific theater. And then I also put Europe. I put somewhere in Europe, but stateside, I want to go to at least California. At least I want to go on the other side of the country from where I'd grown up, because I'd been up and down the eastern seaboard, like many times. I'd been up to Canada growing up. Been to Boston a couple of times. New York, all over New York City. The Carolinas, I've been through there, and Virginia, and never really Georgia. Not really. I've been to Virginia and Florida, so I want to go somewhere else. So anyway, got to do that, and then we spent 6 weeks. The major part of basic training was tech school, and so you learned how to type, you learned how to file forms, you learned about filing systems, you practiced your writing skills. We had these very old clandestine typewriters. They were not electric. They were not computers. And remember, this is like back in 1978. This is 2010, okay? So, what? Yeah, exactly. You had to punch those keys, A, S, D, F, J, K, L, semicolon, right? And then you had to push that lever, and you loved all that noise. Huh? Where am I? So,
I actually like that.
I think I got up to about 35 words a minute, as a matter of fact. Actually, that wasn't too bad. And you had to sort of memorize all of this, a lot of the forms filing, and pass the typing test. And then you were tested at the end of each week. It was a block a week. You took a block every week. And at the beginning, I didn't take that very seriously, so I got set back my first block. That's why I sort of talk to you kids all the time about take this stuff seriously, because it'll bite you before you know it if you don't, pay attention to what you're doing and do what you're supposed to do. So anyway, finally got through that. I was in basic training for 7 weeks instead of 6. And let me see. When the training instructors, they weren't too bad. I got sick once. I got a virus. So I had to go and get antibiotics once. And the weather wasn't bad at all, really. It was a very nice time to be in Texas, because Texas gets really hot. But in a couple of days, like I said, it got so hot until we couldn't go out and do the regular PT out in the sun. So from there, then I think, did I get a break? I went home before I went to tech school. So I came home and visited everybody. Yeah, I did. And then I got my car. Came home and got my car. I went back to Virginia, flew back to Virginia, and my father was holding my car for me. So I got that and went to New York, stopped back by to see him, then drove down to Florida to see my family, and then I drove to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. That's where I went to tech school. Okay, so you got all that basic typing and some other administrative skills while I was in basic training, and then no, I got that all wrong. No, you just spent the first 6 weeks just learning the Uniform Code of Military Justice and doing the calisthenics. The reason I got set back because I had a little run-in with my training instructors. So that's when I got set back 3 days the first time and 4 days the second time. Okay, so now I was also in like 3 flights. I was in my first flight, then I was in another flight, and then I was in the third flight. Yeah, it's all coming back to me now. So anyway, and then when I got to tech school, I didn't take the administrative training seriously. I thought I just breezed through it. And I wasn't doing my memory work. So then I got left back a week there. So I did 7 weeks in basic and 7 weeks in tech school also. Okay, and so I was supposed to do 12 weeks, but I did 14. So, hey, look, it's all history now, and it's a good lesson for you all. Okay, so anyway, let's see where we at. So the fellas in the flight, they were pretty good. Wasn't too bad. You could feel like there was some hierarchical things or some favoritism things going on. You could feel some of the racial undertones going on in basic training, but it wasn't too bad. And with in tech school, I felt like some of the training instructors were a little harsh on the girls. Like they were sort of, I don't know, just being extra hard on some of the girls. And I could never I could never summarize or come to the point where I was like comfortable with it and say like, well, maybe they should have been that hard on them. You know, I saw girls crying sometimes, and it's stuff is very demanding, and they're trying to make you a stronger person because it is a military atmosphere. You have to have a lot of military, what they call military bearing. They teach you that military bearing. Where you don't give it any easily. You have to maintain your military bearing at all times. They had a thing called, in that Uniform Code of Military Justice, there was a term they called public, PDA acronym, and it means public display of affection. And you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be kissing and hugging somebody in public, especially when you're in a uniform. Another part of the UCMJ, I remember very distinctly, the water was very bad in New Orleans, around that area, because you have all of that, those factories and refineries. They dump everything in the water, and if you have a bathing suit, your uniform, or just regular civilian clothes, being military personnel, if you were found to have been swimming in the Gulf, you would get disciplinary action called an Article 15, because you are possibly jeopardizing something that the government owns, which under their contract is you. They pretty much, the contract reads something to the effect of, you belong to the government. And you cannot abuse your uniform, your boots, your books, your bunk, or your body. Okay? You can't abuse any of that. And they own it for, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How long is the contract? 4 years, 6 years, whatever, 2 years. It's theirs. Uncle Sam owns that. So, but you really going in and swimming in that water, you really took your life in your own hands. You get very sick or die from that water, because it became very, very toxic from the misuse of the private businesses that were dumping all that stuff into the ocean there. So anyway, on to tech school, I had to stop at I'm trying to remember what base that was. I don't know, it was Patrick Air Force Base, because I was running out of money. I had to stop by there and borrow a little money. They took it out of my regular pay, and it was all fine. Got me over to Keesler. I was there for, like I said, 7 weeks at tech school. It was a really good experience. I made a lot of nice friends, met a lot of nice people. Excuse me. A couple of the guys that I actually met there I wound up being stationed at March Air Force Base. That's what I thought. Put that on pause, please. Got it?
You bought my phone. Which wars did you serve in?
There was no actual war, but let me go back for a minute. There was no combat. I came close to combat once, and I'll get to that when I get to Europe. But first, I need to go back to Keesler for a minute. One of our close friends, you had a lot of people that were becoming couples, actually, and some, in basic training, but some more so actually in tech school. And one of the couples, I never forget, very nice people, mixed couple, we actually drove them to New Orleans. I think that was about 60 miles from the base, from Keesler Air Force Base. 60 miles west, going towards Texas. And we actually took them to the clerk of court, the courthouse, and we all witnessed. It was about 6 or 7 of us. We squeezed up into one of the girls' parents had brought her a car, and they got married, and then we all went out to lunch before we went back, and we got permission to take like a day off and went and did the whole thing, and it was all we got permission, and we had a good time. We had a really good time. They got married. So anyway, that's pretty much it for tech school. Tech school was a lot of fun. I was got to march people to classes and stuff. We also did at tech school. I'm trying to remember we did it in basic training, but I know at tech school we also had to do GI cleaning of the classrooms. You know, we'd break up into groups, get mops and buckets and brooms and sweep the whole place up. We had to wax the floors. We did that in basic training also. We were waxing floors a lot. Yeah, well, the girls were doing it too. I don't know why you're frowning. But anyway, everybody had to do some housework or KP, you know, kitchen work or something. You know, everybody got a little taste of everything. So after that, I went home. Then I drove home this time. I drove home to see my dad. No, I didn't. I kept going. I went from Keesler's, got right back on 10, and went straight out to March Air Force Base. I almost feel like I went home first after that. I think I went home first. I think I did. Or maybe I just, what I did was, no, I know what I did. When I got out of basic training, then I flew straight to Keesler Air Force Base. Then I went home and got my car. Then I went to Florida and said goodbye to everybody, came back around, and I hit the road and I went straight west to California. And it took me about 3 days to drive out to March Air Force Base. And I went straight across US 10, right into Route 66, and it takes you straight across, drove through Texas, and let me see what's next. I think New Mexico, and then Arizona, and then California. And when I got there, my first NCOIC, non-commissioned officer in charge, Ernie Gagarin, he met me. I think I got there on a Saturday or a Sunday. Must have been a Sunday because it was so quiet. Boy, it was quiet. And I called him, let him know I was running late. And he met me downtown at SIBO. I don't know if I can remember what that acronym means. It's customer service for the military. When you get to the base, it's like where you go to be processed in and processed out. That's what SIBO is. Customer Base Personnel Office. I think I'm pretty accurate on that. So I was at March for 1.5 years, and I served under a colonel and a general at March at the headquarters. I was as a SAC, a Strategic Air Command Base, and it was a good tour of duty for 1.5 years. I was also going to school studying electrical engineering at Riverside Community College. I was about 15 minutes north. It was northwest of the base. Yeah, I had my car so I could go back and forth to school. I was going to school full time. And, I was thinking about becoming an officer, so I wanted to try to finish college then. Up to that point, I had gone to college, 2 different colleges in New York City, part-time, Nassau Community College and Queens College. And I had accumulated a certain number of college credits. So anyway, I was doing that, and officers were very nice to me. A lot of times I go into full duty, and they let me go home and do my homework, which was good. And it was just really like having a regular job. You know, that's the big thing, especially in the Air Force. It was like 8 hours a day, and then after that I go to school in the evening. Some days I had classes. They would let me out of work, and I go to school in the daytime. So I had night classes and day classes that I was taking. So I could go full-time. I think I was carrying like 12 or 14 credits. I only got to go to Los Angeles a couple of times because it was like 70 miles away. And I wasn't making a lot of money being in the service, but, they took care of everything. All your medical and dental was taken care of. You got 3 squares a day. You still got a regular paycheck. I was paying off bills that I had when I went into service. I was getting everything taken care of and squared away. I went to San Diego a couple of times, which is near the Mexican border. I had a friend of mine that lived down there. I dropped him off down there a couple of times, give him a ride. And I had some other friends I went into LA with to a couple of concerts. And that was about it. My NCOIC wanted me, he knew I wanted to go overseas. So he noticed in the base bulletin that there was a position to go overseas that I qualified for. It was postal duty, but it was for Germany and not Japan. And so I said, okay, I really want to go. So I took the opportunity. I went to Germany. I came home and visited with everybody. And in Germany, My father, I left him the car again in Virginia, and I caught the Greyhound bus down to Savannah? No, was it Savannah? Charleston, the Carolinas to fly out. I think it was World Airlines. And it was a 6 or 7 hour flight going over. Took me right into Frankfurt, Maine, in Germany. And I'll never forget that when I got there, it was cold in February. And about 3 months later, I got there in February. And in March, the next month, it warmed up one day, and my entire respiratory system shut down. My allergy kicked in like it never had before. I couldn't breathe. I had to go to the hospital, and they put me on medication. I was working. It was bad enough when I woke up, but in the post office, it was a dust bowl. And as soon as I went into work, it started just getting worse. And after a while, I just couldn't breathe. And I told my NCO, he said, want to know? I said, I'm going to the hospital. He said, for what? I said, because I can't breathe. He said, so why are you going to the hospital? I said, and I went. And I just went to the hospital. They weren't too happy when you walked off and you were sick or anything. You know, it's like, that sort of happened to me when I'll get to the part where I had to come home and my mother was sick. And I actually filed with him to go home when my mother, she had had a stroke before I went into service. And she was a diabetic. And they had to start cutting off her leg. And my sister called me to tell me what was going on. She was in Wilkes-Barre Veterans Hospital up in northern Pennsylvania. And I had to, my sister wanted me to come home, so I told my NCOIC there that what was going on, and I needed to put him for a leave of absence. He told me to take care of it. And a week went by, and he didn't say nothing to me about it. So I asked him about it. He said, oh, he'd forgotten. By this time, my sister was calling me like she was going ballistic and losing her mind. And so I sort of like, I didn't want to lose my military bearing and get in trouble. But I sort of like reminded him a little more forcefully that I need to go home and see about my mother. So 3 days later, I was gone. And when just as I got up there, I went to see my sister in Philadelphia. She was living there with her kids. And so she gave me, my father brought me my car. I think my sister took me up there the first time in her car, but she was really upset. So when we got to the hospital up there, she didn't want to go upstairs to see her again. And when I got up there, a doctor found out that I was there and told me he was glad that I was there. And I was trying to figure out why was he so glad to see me. And a minute didn't go by before I found out, and he told me he needed more permission to cut some more of her leg off. And, I was, so anyway, sure, I gave permission. I sat through, let them, we stayed there. My sister still didn't come upstairs, and I waited until she came out of surgery and make sure she was okay. And I think the next day, I notified my dad. Next day or so, he showed up with my car, and then we drove back up there, and he didn't want to go upstairs either, so he just waited while I visited. And I visited with her. So I stayed for the rest of the week and went up there and visited her a couple more times. I had to go back to work. So I went back, and that was really the major reason why I actually came out of the service. Because she was ill. If I had known any better, if I had known that I could have taken her on as my dependent, I just couldn't figure that out, and nobody gave me the information. I probably would have stayed in for 20 years and 30 years and finished my entire tour. But anyway, while I was in the military, I got into photography. That's how I got in. Well, when you go, we talked about it the whole time. I had a friend of mine that was in the Air Force that worked at IBM with me, and he really encouraged me to go in. It wasn't really that hard because things were hard financially. I wasn't getting along with work, and not secretly, but so I'm not even going to say subconsciously, I had tried to get in once before. So, well, maybe I'll do that now. And Tim encouraged me to go in. And, we talked about, we can get stereo, how cheap, you can get equipment and furniture and everything. So I had my heart set on the stereo system and buying camera equipment. And that's what I did. I started building a stereo system. And I also went and bought a camera. But the thing I noticed was getting the stuff processed was costing me an arm and a leg. Having to film, and everything was filmed then. So you had to buy the film, then you had to have it developed and have the prints. You know, by the time you did all of that, it was like $20 a roll. It was very expensive, and I didn't have that kind of money, so I was just getting ready to pack that camera up. But what I had done was I was practicing shooting like at games, at basketball games and football games. Just as I was getting ready to put that camera away, I had looked at everything and said, well, I can't afford this. Well, at least I bought the camera and I have it to take home. But I had run into a guy on the base, and he said, oh, you took some photos of me. I said, well, I don't remember when. He said, at the football game. He said, okay. And I said, I looked at all that stuff, and I don't think I could identify. He said, well, here's my jersey number. And I went back and looked through all of the slides, and sure enough, I had 5 slides of him there. And I called him, and I told him about it, and he wound up, he said, well, here, come see me at the gym. And he was the assistant director for Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. And what happened was, he bought those slides off of me, and then he told me to come back. He met me out on the street, out on the base. And he told me to come and visit with him at his office the next day. So he gave me like $5 a slide. They're $35. And I think I had 7 slides of his. And I went and visited with him down at the gym the next day. And he asked me would I like a job part-time taking the photos for the base for all the sports. I said, sure. He said, I said, I'd also like to take a class. And that was free, really. I mean, it was free. At that time, going to school in the military, you didn't have to come up with a percentage of it. They paid for the whole class. You know, and I already had that experience in California with them paying for my school totally. Now you have to pay a percentage now. So at any rate, they paid for film, print, processing, school. I traveled all around Europe. I mean, Germany with the basketball, baseball, soccer, football teams to all of the games. I shot all up there on the base. And, you know, paper and film and chemicals, I didn't have to pay for any of that. And I spent so much time learning photography at Mainz Air Base. I was stationed at Camp Lindsay in downtown Wiesbaden. And I went there in the end of '79, and I was there until 1982. That was when I got out of the military. But I spent that 2.5 years studying photography at the base. And I also traveled to Holland with the team. I think, twice. Where else did I go? Went to France twice with my photo class. And it was Big Bend Community College that I studied under at the air base. They had a full-blown professional photo lab with the dark room and teachers and the whole 9 yards. The teachers with 3 Germans who were German civilians, but they were, certified to teach on the base. And they had about 60 years experience between them. I learned a lot from them about all the different formats of photography, from 35 millimeter to 2 1/4 to 4x5 to 8x10, 16x20 up to 20x24. My father gave me, bequeathed, well, he's not dead, but he gave me his 2 1/4 camera. And then my uncle served in World War II as an aerial photographer. So I have a speed graphic that he gave me, a 4x5 inch camera. And then we picked up another one of those through the Children's Coalition program from Wackenhut. They gave us a bunch of equipment. There was another 4x5 in there. So I did all of this. I shot hundreds and hundreds of photographs and traveled all over the place. I went to Greece once. I went to Aviano, Venice, Brindisi, and Napoli in Italy. Went to Alsace and Strasbourg in the south of France. And a lot of bases around Germany. Ramstein, Hahn. Let me see. I can't remember all the bases that I went to in Germany, actually. So anyway, the racism wasn't really bad, especially in Europe. I worried really more about racism within the service than I did actually on what we call the economy. You know, places where you were actually stationed. Even though there was a racial incident when I started going to school at Riverside Community College, I brought my transcripts in. I walked in my dress blues, my Air Force blues, and the lady at the desk actually she told me I was going to have to test to get into college, even though I was already in college. And I actually asked to speak to her superior, one of the administrative staff, and the lady talked to me for about 5 or 10 minutes, and she told me I didn't have to worry about testing. I guess the dialogue went pretty good, and the next thing I know, she said, you just need to go ahead and sign up for your classes, turn in your Air Force paperwork to have your classes paid for, and I started school like within 7 days. I was back in college. So I felt that was a little racist, that whole incident. And, you know, you knew that there was an undercurrent of racism, and you would hear what we would call, you know, lifers. Those are guys who knew that they were going to be in the service, who had been in already for like 10 years. And they talked about a lot of racial incidences, you know, that they had been through while they were in the service. And you know, they also let us know other African American you know, I was when I got out I was E4. So like I was like E2 and E3 out in California. And you know, we were just airmen or buck sergeants, so to speak. And you know, they sort of informed us, and we inquired. You know, you sit around and people talk, and you'd hear about all the racism that they had been through all the way back to like Vietnam. And, you know, some of the older guys, you know, Korean War and World War II, how difficult it was, you know, getting through the military. And, you know, what the environment was like, you know, just trying to, having to deal with the racial issues, you know, that were there historically. So, when I finally got off of active duty, I came home and bought a house and went back to IBM, and I finished my 2 years. I did my 2 years reserve time at Homestead Air Force Base. I went back and I bought a house in Boynton Beach, Florida, and you know, every month I would go for my weekend a month at Homestead. And that was a great experience. Very nice people down there. I got to go to Alpena, Michigan for 2 weeks, 1 year. It only lasted 2 years. A couple of years after that, wasn't really well, it was. I actually ended that because I was having a lot of issues. Almost thought about going into the military towards the end. But I didn't do that. I just stayed at IBM. And I actually regret that because the military was really a great way of life, really was. But I was taking care of my mom, and my sister was she had come and visited, and well, she moved actually to Fort Lauderdale. They were all living in Florida by the time I actually went to California. So, your turn. Questions?
Okay. Do you recall the day your service ended?
Yeah, it was the 23rd of March, 1982. Was active duty, and then I came and I guess I finished the other 2 years reserve 2 years later. I went straight to reserve right after active duty was over.
What did you do in the days and weeks afterward?
Well, I really went back home. I'm trying to think if I took a little trip. I may have taken a little trip and going back to New York, you know, to visit with my son, which I probably did do. And my father had moved. I went back, yeah, he was still in Virginia. So eventually my father did come back and move back to Florida where he grew up. And I visited with my son, but I automatically went back to work at IBM, pretty much. And, you know, saw about buying a house and did that. I stayed with my grandmother for a while in Delray. And eventually bought a house in Boynton Beach. But I went back to work most immediately.
Did you make any close friendships while in service?
Yeah, I did. And actually, as a matter of fact, I think it's like 25 years later, I visited with a couple in the Carolinas outside of Charleston, James and Angela Swinton. We used to sort of, I guess, hang out together. They lived in base housing. They were a family then. They've been married that long. Their daughters, one of them did go in the military, and the other one didn't, I believe. And I just visited with them like about a year and a half ago in Charleston. And we didn't really stay in touch. They just managed to, I believe they actually relocated from Germany. I had met them while I was in California. And then, we reconnected in Germany. Jimmy was stationed at the same base. We worked in the same place at the post office, as a matter of fact. So we really became very close friends. And I think I got out of Germany before he left, absolutely. And then I believe that he was stationed and went back to California. And he raised his family and over the course of the years. And he finally found me on the internet. And we hooked back up, and I took kids through there once to see him on the way to D.C. And we had breakfast, I think, at a Denny's off of 95. And we didn't stop back through on the way back. Just I went back to see them on my own. And so I guess till today, those are the only friends that I really stayed in touch with after all these years. I sort of regret that. There were a couple of the friends I wish that I had, a couple of roommates that we were fast friends, and I didn't stay in touch with them, and I'm sorry that I didn't.
Did you join a veterans organization?
No, I have not. But doing this project, I'm glad that I maintain my benefits with the VA hospital. I like going, I like the service that I get from the VA hospital. And doing this Veterans History Project is bringing back a lot of memories about a lot of camaraderie that you have when you're in the military. You make friends. It's like you're with family. You acting with other people because you really have so much in common. When you're in the military, you have a lot in common with other people. You really do. So you're really bound to make at least several close friends, at the very minimum. But doing this project right here is bringing me back around to recreate a lot of those moments of camaraderie.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
I went back to my old career, but it actually changed. I was doing product support prior to going into the service for IBM. But when I went back to product support, and a couple of years later, I got into telecommunications support, providing people internally with service for computers, getting them hooked up to particular software, websites. I think I was doing a marketing site. I was maintaining a major marketing site for IBM, as a matter of fact. And after that, I did that. I eventually left IBM in 1987. And I was a courier. I drove taxi. I did electrical work. I did some carpentry work. I did some marketing. And eventually got into what I'm doing now, which is 1989, 1990, I started working with kids. And so that means from 87 to 90, I did all that knockaround stuff. 1991, I started volunteering at the detention center on 45th Street here in West Palm. And I started doing some after-school programming in Pleasant City. And in 93, I filed actually for a nonprofit status for the Children's Coalition. We got it in 94. And that was about 15, 16 years ago, and here we are. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, for the last 15 or 16 years, is working with kids, teaching photography and video. And a lot of great field trips. The Veterans History Project has taken us across the country as far northwest as Colorado Springs, and up and down the eastern seaboard, Washington, D.C., New York City, back to the Carolinas, Atlanta, Georgia, all around the region of southeast Florida, as far south as the Keys. And there you have that.
Do you attend any reunions?
No, I've never attended either a high school reunion, a college reunion, or a military reunion.
Is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Just last but not least, I really love the work that I do now. I really love this project, the Veterans History Project. And it's great still being involved in this, from a military sense. And also photography was something that I developed and learned to love while I was in the service. And I've been enabled to stay in that also for 30 years.
Thank you for joining us, Andrew, with us. It's very much appreciated.
You're more than welcome.